Good morning, Bulldogs. Let's get right to it today. So this, I actually just I'm doing my video because I didn't like the first one, but just a few minutes ago, then this number came out. 6.6 million people applied for unemployment since last week, and last week it was 3.3 million, which was an insanely high number. And now it's doubled. I guess it's not a surprise. For second straight week, record is set for jobless claims. Last month, it was the worst week since I had under 700,000 in 1982. So yes, our population's bigger, but that's still a heck of a lot different. Every day we've been looking at these maps and these photos. So the U.S. cases, you see how this sphere has grown and the dark red area has enlarged as well. Unfortunately, we're in that dark red area, and I hope your families are doing well with this. The world map they did has changed. Remember, they were just shading it in different shades of like orangey red. They're doing spheres there as well. So unfortunately, we're in a big bubble. You see the darkest red is in Europe, and we want to try to ensure that we don't follow suit with that. And the markets took a little bit of a dip again, as you can imagine. All right, April, all the signs look that April won't be great, so we'll follow here. Dr. Fauci is going to get more security because conspiracy theorists have been threatening him. All sorts of crazy news. When people stopped traveling more than 2 miles. So you see this part of the country is still not really responding. And we're in that dark green. We're sort of got that hint. And now it's showing that the cases are spreading in this area. The governor of Florida has finally put restrictions there, but not for religious services, which is drawing some criticism as well. So I want to jump to show you guys BBC News a little bit. They're concerned as the global cases are almost at 1 million, and as their healthcare workers are not getting tested. So testing issues is not only a concern in America, but also in the UK. It also has a lot of stories analyzing and critiquing the US to see what they can learn from us, like what the US has gone wrong and right. Medical supply shortages. I know, like, we sort of hit the end to our stockpile, so to speak. There was another one. Hey, how Dua Lipa released an album from isolation. It may have just changed over the past 5 minutes. More photographs of deserted streets that are usually busy, sort of like what we were doing before we left. So, on this day in history, if you have not uploaded anything to your timeline in a while, you may want to do so. I know some of you have. I picked this event for a few reasons. One, because it relates to the French Revolution, which we were discussing right before we left. This is part of the international effects of the French Revolution. So this isn't about people at home complaining about taxes, but how countries like Britain thought this was a good time to attack their enemy, France. And Britain had the best navy in the world. What they did is they wanted Denmark, with its copious miles of water, to form an alliance. And they first tried to diplomatically, and Denmark was like, no, we don't want to do it. So Britain tried to force an alliance. So this is the inlet to Copenhagen. So this happens right here. So Denmark tried to make a blockade so British ships couldn't get through. And it wasn't all just military ships. It was all sorts of ships, as you can see, that they could get out. They put up a good fight, but ultimately it was a British victory. You can read about the different events, how at the end one of Denmark's ships just exploded, and like 250 people on board, all died, right? Tragedy. Over 600 deaths total between the two sides and about like 3,000 casualties between the two sides. Was a British victory. Now, April is National Poetry Month, and we're going to do an activity where you guys are going to add slides to our Poetry Month deck. I'm not assigning it to you yet, but if you want to think of things over the weekend, if you want to think of poets that were born in April or have something relevant to the month of April, and you want to start looking at that. So today I'm sharing Hans Christian Andersen, who was more known for writing fairy tales, but was a poet as well. If you saw yesterday's video about Charles Dickens and the Industrial Revolution, they were contemporaries of themselves, and they actually met several times. So Victoria Tedeschi is a scholar who writes how his fairy tales reflected the social anxieties that were happening at the time from all the changes from the Industrial Revolution, from this new pollution, from land getting taken down, from coal in the skies, how people now worked differently. So she mentions how a lot of these are about environmental changes that people are concerned about on land and on sea with the installation of the transatlantic telegraph cable. So you can go ahead and read that. So I'm sharing, I was actually going to share a poem, but I'm sharing a portion of his fairy tale, The Pixy and the Grocer. And then I added a photo that is contemporary that relates to what's going on with this global pandemic. So that's sort of the task. Remember how we learned with Da Vinci how to connect to unrelated things? That's what we're going to continue to try to do this month. And I put in a third twist. I'm trying to find poets that were alive during the Industrial Revolution. You don't need to have to do that when it's your turn, but it'd be cool if you can. So here's some excerpts. One night, the Pixy was awakened by a terrible noise. People were banging on the shutters of the store. The whole street was as light as day from a fire. Everyone wanted to know whose house was burning. Was it his own or the neighbor's? It was terrible. I skipped a few paragraphs here. I will share myself between them, he said, for I cannot leave the grocer altogether. I must stay there for the sake of the porridge. That was quite human. After all, we too go to the grocer for the porridge's sake. So the idea is not for the grocer's sake, right? This Pixy lived with the grocer and his wife, if you were to read the whole story. But it's the idea of what's going on now. Maybe you have family members working in a grocery store. Are they getting hazard pay? Are they making sure that they're healthy and safe as all these people bombard these grocery stores? And are people going there just worried about what they need, or do they keep the health and the welfare of these grocery store workers in their minds as well? So something to reflect on. So speaking of reflection, that's what you're going to do for the assignment that you'll work on today, or maybe even tomorrow, and it has to do with Women's History Month. So ever since we've been at home, every day in my update video, I've been sharing at least one, if not more, woman who was born on that day in history or had some connection to that day in history. And for some of the videos, I shared how they connected to some of the STEM values. For some, I didn't share, but I shared enough about them that you can make your own connections about how they connect to our STEM values. Now, if you've only watched the videos of art class, you may want to go back to our YouTube channel and watch the ones I posted for day 2 and day 3 as well. If you were someone who took notes or wrote on your timelines while we were in school, I was sharing information on women for the beginning of March. A lot of entertainers for when you walked in the door for music. Some were children's authors, if you remember, children's book authors. So anyone that we've gone over, you can then pick, and you're going to explain how they connect to Women's History Month. Now, I did give an example. So what I did, I actually spent time yesterday and I looked up female cartoon characters that had birthdays in the month of March. All right, I hope you're impressed. I just put in 3. I had Barbie, Wonder Woman, and Marge Simpson. So I put how Marge Simpson, so first I included the background information, and then how I thought she related to reflection. One example was because she encouraged her daughter Lisa to write in her diary. I shared a clip of when she remembered her childhood. I mentioned another episode where she reflected that she would have went to the prom with Homer. Then I have Wonder Woman as an example of collaboration. How in the comic number 67, she partners with her enemy, how she worked with Superman and how she worked with Batman. Now, I haven't included outside resources here. So if you go beyond my videos and you look up something on your own of those people, you would include that. How Barbie is an example of persistence. I mean, she did have over 200 careers, right? If that's not persistence, I don't know what is. So notice if you wanted a 4 on this assignment, you're going to actually add an additional example from someone who has a birthday or some date related to March that I did not go over. And then I could possibly use them for next year. Maybe you even want to make your own slide on them and you could do a little screencast explaining them and I could just pop that in for next year. So that would be to get a 4. But if you have all the details, you could still get a 3 and do very well. Now, what you want to make sure is that you have everything here included, right? Look at how I'm scoring it. And like maybe you have a 1 here and a 2 here. I'll sort of average those together. Hopefully it's like between a 3 and a 4 or 2 and a 3, whatever, not ones. So look over this. You can complete this format. I have this on Canvas. If you prefer to make it into a PowerPoint, if you prefer to do your own video on this, you know, something different, right? Find opportunities to be creative while you're at home right now. Maybe not just stare in front of a screen. Maybe you want to do this on paper, then upload it differently. Feel free to do so. It's just a classwork grade. I was contemplating making it a project grade, but I think for an honors class, this is reasonable classwork assignment. Okay, so if you have any questions, let me know. I'll be in checking probably till 3 o'clock, and then again tomorrow morning before you need to submit it tomorrow evening. And I hope everyone's well. I've been thinking of everyone as these unemployment numbers go up. I know many people have been affected by this. Oh, PLC next block. You know, and I'm thinking of you guys a lot. If there's anything I should know, troubles you're having, like I had with Wi-Fi this morning, you know, let me know and I'll work with you the best we can. All right, stay well, Devils.